So we'll do this one first. Right? Do you think you want to do that first? And then I show you for a bell. And then we can do the other one. Okay, we'll do like the first. Okay, yeah. Right, is that the one you said? Yes, my contributions of these, no people here. Then recitation. Then looking for a bell, and then just do this two. And that one. That was this. Or just us two are going to do one. I don't have the recording. I was going to have her retention or join this on the recording today. So Kim and I will say, if my man. I remember. Yeah, not this. I got to wait till when they dump them out once. See, that's what told me. Most of it out. Make sure not. I think she's gonna put it right here on this thing, I guess. Yeah. Well, I know what I'm doing this week. I'm going on the streets.
Those are pretty good and thorough. These recent ones, these 1900 and up names are the ones I'm now concerned about and hoping you can add to the list. If you know anyone that needs a veteran form to fill out, feel free to take them home with you. Pass them to your neighbors, pass them to your old friends that lived in town, so we can keep compiling these names, so eventually maybe some computerized system can be at the town hall so people can just walk in and pull up these names when they want to see them. Otherwise, come see me. Also, Bob Good can help me with this one, because it's a new card the county is offering. You need to come see Ann, our town clerk, and bring Bob. Are you still here? What's the?
Yes, the DD 214, your service record.
So you need to bring your service record into the town clerk so she can fill out and give you one of these new cards. And then there are a list of many companies in Onondaga County that you can get like a 10% discount because you are a veteran. And I was surprised there's even undertaker parlors in here.
Thanks.
No, I am stooping so low that lately I've been getting names out of the obituary columns to add to the list. Like this week, I just added Robert Morgan's name today to the list. And he was a Korean veteran. Okay, thank you all for coming. And we're going to start out today honoring our Korean veterans. And Tony Falco would like to go first. And Tony, would you like to come up? He tells me he's bashful, but we'll just encourage him right on.
Good evening, good afternoon, everybody. There isn't much that I can tell, except that I was one of the lucky ones in Korea that I hit the tail end of the war. And I was the acting mass sergeant as a corporal. Figure that one out. But anyway, in 1954, a friend of mine was ready to rotate back to the States in May. So we wanted to give him a party. So how were we going to give him a party. Guys that went to R&R in Japan had a tough time bringing anything back that you could have a party with. So what we did is we had the government allowed us to bring in 3.2 beer in our service center, no more than that. So I decided, being an acting sergeant, to make them a pizza. And it's a wonder they're still alive today. I made the dough, and then I turned around and got some ketchup in our storage room. I used that as my tomato. Then I got some American cheese that the government sends to us. And I broke that up in pieces. I also had grated cheese, which we always have because we always had some form of pasta. This is all after we had lived on sea rations for quite a long time. So I made the pizza with the dough. I rolled it out and everything, and I did a good job with it, I think. And I baked it. So I took it to the commo tent. That was my buddy that was from New Jersey. His name was Joe Monjoy, Sergeant Joe Monjoy. So I brought the pizza to him, and I think he thought he was dreaming all this because there was no such thing as a pizza above the 38 parallel. Well, anyways, we cut it up, and one of the guys that were in the CP got us the 3.2 beer. So we had beer and pizza. There's a picture of it, I believe, at the museum across the road. And this was in May of 1954. And then he rotated. He was having this party. We were having this party for him because he was going to be rotating back in another day or two. So that's the party we wanted to give him. The battalion commander learned of it. And he said to me, how long do you have left? I says, I'm going to be rotated in November of 1954. In December, I'll be leaving. He said, well, how would you like to spend some time in battalion headquarters? I says, for what? He says, well, your MOS is 1824, and boy, we got guys that are working there from the motor pool and from the quartermaster. He says, and there are cooks. So I said, well, my time is almost short. I says, and I'd rather stay with the guys I've been serving with for 13 months, you know. And he says, well, I respect that. He says, and I'll let you off the hook. So that was the end of that big story for me. And that's about all I can tell you. And then from that point on, it was just waiting for my turn to come and go home. And it did finally come in November when I got my orders. But anyways, that's one story I can relate to you. The other ones I'd rather not because it's just not one that I would want to talk about. So thank you very much.
Yay.
The 60th anniversary is coming up in June 25th. It's already happened.
Yes.
So-
But tell them about the nice invitation you received.
Oh, from the South Korean, well, all Korean veterans should have got that letter. I got a letter from the South Korean president. It's the president today. It's the second one I got. I got one 3 years ago or 4 years ago, the existing president. And then the one I got today, they're inviting, I don't know if any of you know the Korean War veterans, that you're allowed to go to Korea, and I guess the South Korean government's going to pay for half of the expenses. And they're willing, if you served in combat, they're willing to pay for the flight and the 7-day stay in Korea. So I don't know if anybody got it, but I got a letter such as that, you know, to go back to Korea. But I'd like to go back, but I don't know. I still am working, and I left my M1 in Korea. So thank you very much.
Ken, would you like to come up? Ken Beardsley?
Korea for a little while. When I didn't get anything I needed, I got up the front line, I stayed there. I come back down one time for, I think it was a week, down in the partway back to some little town, little camp back there. Right back up again, and all I saw much of was the river, some buildings, and one night we had a little scrap over there. And that's really the most I saw of Korea was at all over there. It was, truthfully, with me, it was boring. And I was very glad that it was, because all the things that we were extremely fortunate. We had one night, that little scrap, carrying VAR, and I heard about that night, that was the last one. I had anything to do with anything, I was heading home. And I was, yes, I was very lucky. The fellow behind me, beside me, got hit in the leg. Otherwise, as far as I could do this over there, that's about all I can say about it.
Thank you very much.
Freddie, you gotta say your last name because they don't want to kill us.
That's all right.
Because a lot of times people say hoteling instead of hoteling.
Don't worry about it. Thank you. My name is Freddie Corper. I live in 10th and Gray Road, and I'm a Korean veteran, and I'm very proud of that. I didn't fight in the war. I was a tail gunner on a bomber, on a B-25 and a B-29, and eventually a B-36. I had the honor of flying with Kurt LeMay on his round-the-world mission, nonstop. Refueled by KC-135s. We did a lot of reconnaissance bombing, but we never dropped any bombs. My wife told me I should write a speech, but I'm not a politician. I am very, very proud to have served my country. Today I work as a volunteer at the VA, and I have thousands of hours at the VA. And I teach people computers, and I rebuild old computers and give them to veterans who can't afford them. And I teach the veterans how to rebuild them as well. Not much more I can say except that I love my country very much, and I'm very proud to be American.
Do we have any other Korean veterans with us? I think it would be nice to stand up and recognize you if there's any here. Okay. Oh, good. Introduce yourself.
I'll just tell you from here. I'm Jack Munson, and I live just about 4 miles south of here. And the only thing is, when they called for the Korean War, I enlisted, but they sent me to Europe and North Africa, so I didn't get the chance to fight in Korea.
Well, thank you anyways. All right, Bob Hill. Could you please come up? Bob's going to tell us about our little short clip that we're going to watch.
My dad, William Oakwood, was a World War II veteran, and then he volunteered for Korea. He had 5 children at home at the time and left his job, school teacher, volunteered to go to Korea. He was assigned to the Korean Military Advisory Group. They were advisors to South Korean units. He was an advisor to a rock artillery group. And I'll tell you just a few of his experience. One of the most harrowing was when he first got there. He was looking for a ride to get up to his unit, and finally found a corporal who said he knew the way. And on the way they got lost. And they wound up in no man's land. And at one point were surrounded by violent guerrillas. And out of the midst of the crowd came a man who, my fat dad said his face appeared to glow. and he waved his hands, turned and spoke to the crowd, and they left. And he said, "You go now." And they left without getting hurt at all. And these people were armed with machetes, pitchforks, some of them had pistols, and they let them go. My dad had an interpreter, and he was the first one assigned to him there at a forward observation post, and his interpreter was shot through the head by a sniper standing right next to him. My dad was sure that the round was meant for him, but the guy missed. I have a photograph here, and I'll pass this around. When you first look at it, you'll think, well, my dad's washing this major's feet. But this is a Department of the Army photo taken for Yank magazine. The major in the picture, if you look closely at his foot that's exposed, you'll see teeth marks in it. The Communist Chinese broke through their perimeter one night and were bayoneting people in their sleeping bags. And they grabbed this major out of his bag and were going to take him prisoner. And there were 3 Chi-Coms that had him. And they got 2 of them, enemy soldiers, on the enemy side of the wire and 1 on the American side. And this major said, "This is my best opportunity if I'm going to get away." And he kicked one of the soldiers in the mouth, the one on the friendly side, and managed to knock him out. And that's why he's got the teeth marks in his feet, and he managed to get away. My dad said the guy had the shakes for a couple of days before he could get over that. But my dad was very proud of his service, and we're proud of it. He did take some 8mm film while he was over there, some of which we survived after many years. And a few years ago, he had it put on to videotape, and we do have some of that tape. It was shot from a helicopter from the U.S. cruiser Toledo that was giving gunfire support to his units.
Very end, we'll take a Korean veteran's photograph, and then we'll do a Vietnam veteran photograph. And we will have refreshments. Since we're in between, we'll go to our singing group.
Didn't have enough time.
This is my sister and this is my daughter. This is our friend Kendall. Okay, we're going to start out with My Country Tis Thee.
And we're all gonna sing.
If you know it, go ahead and join in with it. My country tis a sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing. And where my father's light, and love and pilgrim's pride, from every mountain side, let freedom reign. My native country, land of the noble free, thy name I love. I love thy rocks and rills, thy woods and tangled hills, thy heart with rapture thrills, thy fan of love. Our fathers gone to thee, author of liberty, to thee we sing. Long may our land be bright, with freedom's holy light. Protect us, thy
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Land of free, sweet home liberty. It came at such a great price. Our soldiers brave and true gave their lives for me and you. Thank God for the red, white, and blood, blood, my freedom. Someone had to die. Someone freely took my place. Blood was the price for supreme sacrifice. Someone died that we might be free.
Among the great names of our founding fathers, you probably never heard the name of John Ross. Yet he was a man of principle, a preacher and patriot. The Reverend Rossberg knew of the imminent danger that morning. Before the sun came up, as he pulled on his boots to lead his parishioners on a bold march to Philadelphia, he knew of the stout British opposition. Rossberg was no fool. He touched the warm cheeks of each of his 5 sleeping children, considered that he might never see them again in this world. As he lifted the bolt of the door, he breathed a prayer from Jeremiah 49:11. Leave thy fatherless children, I will preserve them alive. Let thy widows trust in me. He kissed his good wife goodbye and took his place at the head of the line of march. His resolution never faltered. He did not look back. John Rossberg, preacher and patriot, was eventually captured and killed by the British, mutilated by sword and bayonet. Though you never heard his name, the good Reverend poured out his life's blood on the altar of freedom. He paid the ultimate price.
Over the sea, on an old rugged tree, a battle was fought for you and me. It won't be far again. We have victory over sin. Thank God for Mount Calvary. My freedom, someone had to die. Someone freely took my place. Blood was the price for supreme sacrifice. Jesus died that we might be free. My freedom, someone had to die. Someone freely took my place. Blood was the price for supreme sacrifice. Someone died that we might be free. Jesus died that we might be free. Is being, I don't know if you all know, I showed you they wrote it for the Civil War documentary. What's his name, Burns? Ben Burns wrote that for the, it has a sound to it that, brings back, kind of fits with the old. And to bear with me, I broke a string on the way here and I'm making do with a cap job also. If it stays in tune, we'll be doing good.
Pre-situated here.
One more song, we'll have you sing with us. Show us what it is.
We're going to sing the Battle Hymn of the Republic. We'll just give you one verse. Everybody knows the first verse.
That's what we're doing. This one person's fine. We're doing that in, what are we doing that?
Anybody know what this is?
Yes, you have a guitar.
It's called the dobro.
Dobro.
Yeah.
What's the difference?
Play the steel. Okay, here we go.
Forerunner of steel. Ah.
Eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord. He is turning out the angels when the flames of wrath destroy. He has loosed the faithful lightning of his terrible sword. His truth is marching on. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. His truth is marching on. That's it.
That's it.
Very much. Usually, sometimes their older brother Frank sings with him, but Frank and his wife are down in Maryland because their oldest son was wounded in Afghanistan in the beginning of May. And what was this operation this week? 11? 9? I think it was 10 the last time. Well, anyways, he's up there. He's had a number on the leg, and they're really trying to save that leg, and there's probably going to be another one after this one. But we thank the Naval Hospital in Maryland. They've been terrific, and his parents are very heavy with the Naval Hospital too. And he's a Marine, like Alan is a former Marine, but a peacetime Marine. As he say, be lucky. And my sister Nancy's here, the proud mom. And Sheila is quite an amazing girl because actually she never had any lessons of any kind. She got our Aunt Beulah's piano, and she learned by ear how to play the piano, and then pretty soon she picked up these other instruments and kind of self-taught herself a lot and got her brothers singing, and they're quite amazing when they get together, even with their spouses. So thank you very much, family. Now we're going to go on to our Vietnam veterans. I better turn my page to see who. We're going to start out with Robert Bertram that brought us all these wonderful flags, and he's going to talk about them. And he's a Vietnam veteran.
Well, thank you, Ruth. As you can see, I came prepared with 4 pages here, and I'm a little embarrassed because the Korean veterans all stepped up here and didn't have a note in their hand. So I want to ask Tony, what kind of rations did you guys have to be able to remember all these things without a note?
K-rations.
Okay, nothing's changed then. Must be
Join
me.
the Navy.
Hey, ladies and gentlemen and fellow veterans, lived in Pompey for 26 years with my wife Maria and my daughter Nora. I served in Vietnam from 1966 to 1969, in the Army from those 3 years, with 1968 in Vietnam. During that time frame, I was stationed at Chu Lai, which is in northern South Vietnam. I was assigned to the 14th Aviation Battalion, which was attached to the Americal Infantry Division in that period of time. My responsibilities were, I was the security platoon leader. I was the battalion S2, and S2 is the person that is responsible for gathering in the intelligence, enemy intelligence, and disseminating it to our particular personnel, in this case the pilots, so that when they went out on missions they were informed as possible on what the enemy situation was in the area of operation that they were going to go through or go into. And then I finished up as the executive officer of the headquarters company. Like many vets, when I came back from Vietnam, it was the 1960s were certainly a very confusing period. Basically, I just kind of wanted to forget what I did and what happened over there. So for a long time, I buried those thoughts. Give or take about 1994, I bought a motorcycle. And I had a friend, and the friend said, next year, do you want to go down to Rolling Thunder in Washington, D.C.? And I said, well, what's Rolling Thunder? And he said, it's a POW-MIA demonstration for a full and accurate accounting of all of the POWs that we had left behind in Vietnam because we were in such a big hurry to get out of it and end that war. And I said, yeah, I'll go. So I went, and there was like 70,000 bikes down there, motorcycles, in the North Pentagon parking lot. They gathered, and then they would go at a designated time, 6 miles through Washington, D.C., and terminate at the wall, the Vietnam Veterans Memorial there. And I was so impressed with that that I thought, gee, what can I do to do something special? So they had lots of flags and everything, but I said, well, maybe, one thing that every person that was in the service, or almost every person that was in the service, they knew what unit they were in, okay? And they took a great deal of pride in whether you were in the 3rd Marine Division or the 1st Infantry Division or any part of the 7th Air Force or any of the Navy operations there. They all knew it. And they all took pride in it. So I thought, well, I'll take these patches that they wear, okay, and I'll enlarge them and make flags out of them in their honor. And so that's what we did. And I'll read this inscription, which will summarize what I just said. This flag display is presented in honor and memory of all those who served and sacrificed during the Vietnam War. The flags are enlargements of the shoulder patches worn by most service personnel identifying the individual units or command they were assigned to while in Vietnam. Now, the other thing too that you should also be aware of is that many of these units are still active today in the Middle East. 101st Airborne, the 82nd, the engineering battalions, the 20th, 3rd Marine Division, they're still active today, and I have two here that don't fit the bill because they didn't serve in Vietnam, and that's the 174th Fighter Wing. And then for those of you that are familiar with right up the road here, it's the 10th Mountain Division, which is almost our homegrown base here. So in honor of those troops, I've included these with the display. So if anybody says they didn't serve in Vietnam, I know that. Okay. I've had the honor of participating in the Rolling Thunder demonstration from that first year for 17 consecutive years. I also have had the honor of displaying these flags at the Vietnam Veterans Memorial on Memorial Day for 14 consecutive years right next to the wall. I've also had the privilege of probably a couple dozen parades, 8 moving walls throughout New York State, dedications for service monuments, Vietnam monuments, both in New York and in Canada. Other variety of presentations that this has taken place on. All this was in the name of remembrance. If you remember, I refused to remember for almost 20 years. So I'm hoping to make a comeback, okay? I also want to recognize my wife Maria and my sister and my daughter who's not here for their tireless efforts in setting these up and taking them down and mending the flags over the years. So I appreciate that very much. As I mentioned, I had the honor to display these at the wall, but in 1968 I wrote a poem, and they allowed me to read that poem as part of the Memorial Day observance at the wall. And I'd like to conclude by reading that poem to you. Now, this was written for the Vietnam Wall, but really the essence of the poem is for any veteran in here, himself or his family members, who I will reference in this poem. So please, I require that you use a little bit of imagination and pretend that behind you, if you've seen the wall in Washington, this huge black granite wall with over 50,000 names in it, on it, 8,000 names on it, is right behind me as I read this, okay? So please bear with me. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of every mother's countless unseen bitter tears, on behalf of every father's shattered dream, on behalf of every wife's anguished and aching heart, on behalf of every child's unknown love and guidance lost, on behalf of all the buddies who cannot comprehend the why of their existence, on behalf of every soul that comes here to feel this wall's mighty passion, on behalf of every unborn who must be nourished in the significance of sacrifice, on behalf of all who will never contemplate the why of why they are blessed with freedom, on behalf of a country that needed mending and remembering of her fallen heroes, on behalf of all those memorialized behind us who cannot speak in words, but whose voices can be heard with the clarity of over 58,000 magnificent trumpets. On behalf of those who went before and those that will come after, we will never, ever forget. Thanks to the Pompey Historical Society and Ruth for my invitation here, and please have a good day, because remember, rain, sleet, snow, or whatever, every day is a good day. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, retired Rear Admiral Carlson, would you please come up and...
Thanks, Ruth. I'm Bill Carlson. Good afternoon, neighbors. My wife and I, Linda, my wife and I have lived here 15 years. I was a professional sailor, okay, as opposed to most of the people who were speaking earlier. They spent a brief period either drafted or volunteered in the military.
I was a professional sailor. I spent a total of 37 years in the Navy during my life. My involvement in Vietnam was actually, I ended up with 44 months of combat pay in Vietnam, which is probably a little more than the average. But when you do that as your living, that was the only war we had. That was my business. I was a warrior. The first involvement was, I was, like I say, I was commissioned in 1959. About 1965, I had just completed 3 years at the Naval Postgraduate School in Monterey, getting my master's degree in underwater physics. I received some orders to a ship that had been out of commission for 10 years. It was a 20-year-old ship. The name of the ship was USS White River, LSMR 536. It was a rocket ship. It had 8 spin-stabilized rocket launchers capable of 30 rounds per minute sustained fire, 240 rounds a minute from the ship, sustained fire. Carried 110 tons of high explosive, also had a 5-inch 38, 2 twin 40s, a bunch of 50s. Crew of 7 officers, 128 enlisted men. And I was 28 years old when I took command of the ship. If you can imagine the responsibility associated with being 28 years old and having command of a ship with 134 people proceeding into combat. The ship was unique. Had the 8 rocket launchers. Most of the ammunition, it carried 110 tons of high explosive. Most of the ammunition was carried above the water line, and the crew lived below the water line, which meant the crew had to walk through magazines anytime they wanted to go get chow, go to the head, do any of the normal evolutions. You had to go through magazines. It was a very unique experience. Let's talk about the crew for just a moment. The crew of the ship, very manpower intensive ship. It was, as I say, built in 1944, spent a small amount of time active in World War II, was recommissioned for Korea, then put in mothballs again, then like I say in 65 it was recommissioned. The crew that I had 7 officers, okay. Other than myself, there wasn't an officer on board the ship that had more than 2 years in the Navy. Of the crew, 128 listed, we had 85 seaman apprentices fresh out of boot camp, had never been aboard a ship. Of those 85, because I took my levy of troops, in June, there is a phenomenon that occurs in the military, at least back then, that people who are available in June usually go into boot camp in January and February. Well, people who go into boot camp in January and February are either what we euphemistically refer to as judicial appointees, where the judge back in those days said, well, you have a choice, young man. You can either go to jail or you can join the service. Or they were high school dropouts. Of the 85 seaman apprentices, I had 3 high school graduates out of 85. There were some good parts about it. I've had command of 3 ships, as I say, spent 33 years on active duty, 4 years in the reserve before that. There were some good things, really good things. For one thing, I never heard the words, "That's not the way we did it on our last ship." Never heard. The other 2 ships I had command of, I always heard that. "Oh, that's not the way we did it." On White River, there was only one way to do it, and that's the way we learned to do it all together. And fortunately, it was my way of doing it. Okay, we took White River over to, we were home quartered in Yokosuka, Japan. Yokosuka, Japan, very interesting place. In Tokyo, Taiwan, about 30 miles south of Tokyo, Tokyo Bay. And we would transit to Vietnam. It took us a week. This ship had maximum speed of 11 knots. You can imagine going across the Pacific Ocean at 11 knots. That's a story in itself. But once we got to, in early '66, after we had trained up and were ready to go to the war, there were four of this class ship, four of the fire support ships. They wanted to have two on the line in Vietnam at all times. So that meant you would spend 2 months on line in Vietnam, a week to get back to Yokosuka, a month either in overhaul, trying to get the ships back into shape after combat, and training, and then a week to go back again. And by that time, you were now talking about back to 2 more months on line. We did that for years, literally for years. I commanded the ship for over 3 years. During the time I had command, we fired 55,000 rounds of 5-inch spin stabilized rockets on targets in South Vietnam. My next experience in Vietnam was another command I had was a guided missile destroyer, U.S. Goldsboro. This was in 71 through 73. During that time, the war had progressed and the ship was bigger and faster. I had a different type crew, it was a guided missile destroyer, and we were making fire and shore bombardment along the coast and also taking and making strikes up north. When you make strikes up north, well, no matter where you are, there's a tendency of people who are being fired at to shoot back. It was better in the guided missile destroyer than it was in the LSMR because at least the ammunition was below the waterline. On the other hand, with the guided missile destroyer, we were making strikes up north, and on the 19th of December, I was ordered off. I left. We had been conducting strikes up north for about 2 weeks, and it was hairy because when we had come in, we were hitting the Binh boat yards primarily, and there were 2 islands just off Binh that were Han Mi and Han Chi islands, and they had heavy shore batteries. So we would start in, coming in a column of 3 or 4 destroyers. We'd be coming in at high speed. Well, there's a problem with high speed. When you're in that shallow water, there's such a thing they call ground effect. No matter how fast you turn the screw, once you get the ground effect, you go 22 knots. That's it. You cannot go faster than 22 knots. You can turn for 35, but all you can go is you go 22 knots because the bottom is sucking you down. As you would come in, we would, with the ECM gear, we would hear the shore battery radar come up. And they came up, we knew the next comes their presence for us, trying to keep us from making our strikes. I was very lucky during the time I was aboard. We took one or two hits. I have a piece of shrapnel I keep in a little box on my desk that I took out of the bulkhead about that far from my head, which every time things got bad during the next 30 years, 40 years, I take it every now and then, I shake the box, and I say, hey, things aren't so bad. Things aren't so bad at all. Unfortunately, the day I left the ship, I have been accused of taking my rabbit boat with me, because the day I left that night, they went in and they were hit. They were hit bad. They took a 5-inch hole on the 01 level just by the guided missile launcher. Unfortunately, it landed in the middle of the repair party, which is probably the worst spot that you can have around land, because these are the people that are charged with repairing the ship, getting it back in action, and killed 3 people outright, injured a large number of people. As I say, I was lucky I was not involved. I was gone. I was aboard USS American carrier at that time. And that essentially was my time in Vietnam. Like I say, I received 44 months combat pay, 2 Bronze Stars, Navy Commendation Medal, 2 Bronze Stars with B, Navy Commendation Medal, Meritorious Service Medal, Combat Action Ribbon, 8 awards of the Vietnam Service Medal, and a couple of 3 awards from the Vietnamese government, the 2 crosses of gallantry at the division level, and a Navy Distinguished Service Order second class, which is the highest award Vietnam would give anybody in the Navy who wasn't an admiral. And I certainly wasn't, because I was a lieutenant. I am very proud of the time of my cruise that I had in Vietnam. And even though some revisionists have said that we shouldn't have been there and this was a big mistake and everything else, we did what our elected official told us to do. We weren't asked, do you want to be in Vietnam? We did what we were told to do, just as our troops are doing in Afghanistan and Iraq. And that's the beauty of the country. If you don't like what you're told to do in the military, you have a chance to get your thoughts in. There's going to be another election in a couple of years, and you can get your thoughts in. In between, you're there, you do what you are told. And I want to thank you for a chance to be here. Thank you.
Barry DeLong, could you please come out?
That was my first one. Thank you for being here. I don't know if you want to stand up or something. It was really hot here before. I'm going to talk a little bit about my family. First, I'm going to insert this sidebar. And then I'm going to go on to my experiences in Vietnam, where I was a ground infantryman with a Marine Line Unit for 13 months. But this is not going to take that long. My family, I'm actually a member of the Son of the American Revolution. My family, we have ancestors from Pompey, going all the way back to the Revolutionary War. One guy's name was John Helmer, who was the brother of Adam Helmer. Does anyone know who Adam Helmer is?
No.
Anyone see the movie Drums Along the Mohawk?
Yes.
Read the book? Well, you know where Henry Fonda's running away from the Indians there, the tomahawk? That was actually based on the run that Adam Helmer made from the forks of the Unadilla to the town of Mohawk to inform the settlers there that Joseph Brant and his Indians were on the way. That was actually, there's a little Hollywood about it, but it was actually Adam Helmer. And he was a lieutenant of scouts. I think he's buried up at Little Stone Arabia, down a church in, up there. Anyway, I had 2 grandfathers in the Civil War, and this is very interesting, very, very interesting for anyone that's roots are in Pompey. If you go to Gettysburg Battlefield and you go up to Culp's Hill, you'll see a monument for the 149th New York Volunteers. These are people from around here. Okay, my grandfather, George W. DeLong, lived on Franklin Road, was a farmer. And then, of course, he had brothers and sisters. And one of his sisters married Jacob Hauser, who was with the 2nd unit that was from here, actually the 122nd New York Volunteers. What's interesting about all of this is that there were 2 different corps in the Union Army. They were rarely going to see each other or be involved in anything together. But for some mysterious reason, on July 1st, the 122nd New York Regiment was sent to reinforce Culp's Hill. And they actually took up a position directly behind the 149th New York. I mean, unless you know anything about the Civil War, this is very unseen. This just doesn't happen. But it happened that night. And when they were attacked by the Confederates. And what happened was you could only fire so many rounds out of a black powder rifle musket that starts to pop. Well, what would happen was the 149th would come out of the trenches, and then the 122nd would move in and take the place, because it was a continuous onslaught. Today, if you go up on Culp's Hill, you'll see those 2 monuments. They'll look different because the 6th Corps was a cross, and the 12th Corps, which was the 149th New York, was a star, sort of a 5-point star. But they're sitting next to each other, and they're both from Pompey. So it's kind of interesting. Anyway, I thought I'd throw that in. I had myself and 2 other brothers went to Vietnam. One of my brothers has since passed away.
My brother Stuart was at Con Ken with the 2nd Battalion of the 4th Marines, a very famous outfit over there. He got 2 medal honors, right? I wish. Anyway, he received 2 Purple Hearts and a Silver Star for his visit, for his action at Camelo Bridge, which is, I guess it was in October 1967, where his unit, Echo Company, 2nd Battalion, 4th Marines, was overrun by a North Vietnamese reinforced battalion. My other brother, Frank, came to Vietnam. He was older than Stuart, and he always felt it was his responsibility to try to get Stuart out, because he was the older brother. He actually got to see Stuart up along the DMZ and insisted that Stu not sign the waiver. You didn't have to have 2 people from the same family at that time in a combat zone. Stu did sign the waiver, or did not sign the waiver, and he came home. Frank then went on, joined the 1st Battalion of the 9th Marines, which is also known as the Walking Dead. They got that name from the North Vietnamese, because months before, in the hill fights around Khe Sanh, they were continually attacked by the North Vietnamese Army and reduced, and they were getting a lot of new green people, a lot of new green replacements. Frank ended up as a forward observer for mortars and artillery with the 9th Marines at Khe Sanh. When they occupied, they were actually a group of units. 26 Marines had Khe Sanh combat base, but other units like 1-9, we're talking about 800 Marines, the battalion's about 800 Marines, had like the Corps, different blocking forces were placed in the hills around Khe Sanh. So if the North Vietnamese did try to take Khe Sanh, they would have had to bounce right into the blocking forces first. Okay, and there was a very famous fight at Hill 865, where for 3 days they weren't even choppering food and ammunition, they weren't taking medevacs, they were completely cut off, the Marines up there, and my brother Frank was there. He was actually calling in close artillery support to keep them off their, to keep them away. Finally, Marines did come in, and I don't want to be a downer today, I really don't, but to give you how frustrated they were that nobody would come in to help them. One of the door gunners from one of the choppers fell out of the helicopter, and the Marines on the hill applauded. Crazy, because no one was there for them. And, I can understand that. The thing about being an infantryman in Vietnam is probably the average infantryman in Vietnam saw combat maybe 1% of the entire time he was there. The rest of the time was monotonous, patrolling through heat, humidity, carrying a lot of weight, eating cold food, being rained down. That's the typical lifestyle you had to enjoy. So a lot of my experiences are not pleasant. Some of them are hilarious. Okay, like there was a time when they used to send tunnel rats in, the tunnels. I don't know if you're familiar with that or not. You get the small guy and say, go in with a flashlight and 45, tell me what you find. Yeah, sure, right. Anyway, but we got to a point where we actually would call the engineers in to blow them in place. We're not sending anybody in that hole. We're just going to put C4 high explosives in and just blow the thing in place. Well, we had this one rookie engineer that blew up there with screen. That wasn't pleasant. Everything flying in all kinds of directions. I remember looking at one other guy and just said, what an ace, boy, this guy's really something. All kinds of stories and situations I could tell you about. I know it's somewhat limited in time, but I think what is strangest for me is my son is a captain in the Army, 2nd Tour in Iraq. He's already wounded, he's got his Bronze Star with his combat V and all this other stuff. It's just the lineage of the lungs. You'd be hard pressed to go to a cemetery in Pompey and not see the name of the lung. You'd be hard pressed. It's just, what's different about it all is that when the 3 of us went to Vietnam, my father was against that war from the very beginning. He made no bones about it. I think there were 3 people in the United States. 2 voted against the Gulf of Tonkin Resolution, and my father was the 3rd. Okay? He was against that war. He had 3 of his sons. What's different about, what's kind of crazy is that I was always against the Iraq War. I saw it for what it was. I still insisted that way. I never was for it. I thought it was a war of choice. Coming from Vietnam, I think one of our legacies was to make sure that this government would never do that again. To involve us in something that there was no game plan for winning, for us to come back and commit and get out. I saw it happening again in Iraq, and I was very upset, only to see my own son volunteer and go away. Now I understand how my father felt. But be that as it may, it's all good now. He's back. He's about done with the United States Army, he says. And we're moving on. If there's any questions at all, I urge you to go to Gettysburg. It's a fantastic weekend trip. Culp's Hill is where you'll see those monuments on the crest of Culp's Hill. It's really quite fascinating.
Did I leave anybody out that I asked to speak? Are there any other Vietnam veterans here? Would you please stand up? Tell us who you are.
I really wasn't expecting to be here, or, you mind to come up there or what?
Sure.
Yeah, go on. I don't know if I had it better than you or not, but, we were on, the Brownwater Navy. Okay, I'm sure you know what we went through. Like I said, difficult for me to speak. I grew up Fabius, and we had a farm. I didn't like farming. So I got my draft notice. So I just figure what's the best to go in. And back then Vietnam wasn't started, but of course, you know, I'm going to be a tough Marine. So that was my first goal, to join the Marines. And then I started analyzing, you know, I don't want to do that. I want to take the easy way out. So I joined the Navy. So I didn't get the easy way out, believe me. We were known as the Brownwater Navy. Actually, a lot of us called Mekong Delta Yacht Club. So that's what we did mainly, was have fun going up and down the rivers of Vietnam. And I don't know, our unit, I think, produced the most Medal of Honors in the Vietnam War. I don't know. We had like 80% casualties. So, that's it.
I think today would be a very nice way to end this if we all stood up and saluted the flag. Now, maybe we could have our Korean veterans come up here and have their photograph, and then we'll do the Vietnam.
Any other Korean veterans?
cruiser Toledo. They called the helicopter the last chance taxi because it took the troops transferring out of country who were wounded or whatever out of the country. And here he's coming down to land on the cruiser Toledo. The Toledo was giving gunfire support to my father's units over on the mainland.
You're talking to an old Toledo girl.
See, these are 6-inch guns on the Toledo. And you have the signalman, crewman landing the helicopter. Those guns, those are 6-inch.
And they look big. Big. By the way, you got beautiful. Thank you.
We're going to fly back over to my father's area, Kansong. And you see part of the coastline and rough the terrain is. Here you can see gun positions in some of the quarters. And also, I believe in one part you see the bunker up here that I have photographs of over there. This huge rock and sandbag bunker they use for their headquarters. That was the Toledo firing that you just saw right there. The simple thing, there's a switch here for VCR or DVD, and being used to simply only a VCR. You see the snow in the mountains? In Korea, anytime you go there, there's always a fog or mist hanging in the mountains. At this point in the war, all they were fighting for really was bargaining chips for the Panmunjom peace talks.
Yeah, right.
During this time, my dad participated in the battles at Finger Ridge and Old Baldy and Pork Chop Hill.
I heard of Pork Chop Hill, and you're saying that was just
Those were the name of the hills that we...
negotiating in effect because there was going to be a ceasefire anyway.
There you're looking out over the coastline towards the Toledo again.
They even had a Jane Russell Hill. You know what that's about.
Yeah, my
This is in some of the villages where that he took film of, the terrain near there. Oh, that's it.